you can be more and you can do more and you can be more of who you truly are, and you can help your team members to do all of that too. And all of you, therefore, can have a greater impact. Sounds pretty good, right? Well, to do that, you have to be able to forget normal, according to our guest today. More specifically, she says you need to employ some magic. And I've got no stick and I've got no potions, but we're going to talk about some magic. That's what we're going to talk about today. Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast, where we are helping organizations and their leaders grow and lead more effectively so they can make a bigger difference across their teams, communities, and the world. If this is you, if you want to lead better and help the leaders in your organization do the same, then please accept my gift of an action guide summarizing the key individual and organizational next steps from all of my guests in 2025. To get that free action guide, just go to remarkablepodcast.com/action guide. One word, action guide. If you are listening to this podcast, you could have joined us live. Well, you can't go back for this one. But as we're doing them, we do them live first. And like in this case, about 2 months plus earlier. So if you want to get earlier access to this information, if you want to join us in a live setting, in a video setting, you can find out when they're happening and how to get involved by going to our Facebook or LinkedIn groups, two of the places where these simulcast. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook or remarkablepodcast.com/LinkedIn, and you'll be set to go. And with that, I'm going to bring in my guest, and there she is. Her name is Claire Brumby, and she is an internationally respected keynote speaker, an award-winning entrepreneur, a leadership coach and trainer, and an author. She helps organizations and ambitious leaders like all of you unlock confidence, clarity, and high performance in a rapidly changing world. She founded a healthy snacking FMCG brand starting at a kitchen table that became a multi-award winning brand that was pitched on the BBC's Dragon's Den. She is the creator of the M.A.G.I.C framework, a modern leadership model designed to help move beyond outdated control-led ways of working and lead with more courage, connection, and intuition alongside strategy. She is a trained leadership coach and NLP practitioner and the author of 2 books, The Winning Mix and her new book, Forget Normal, I Want Magic. And we're going to talk about that today. Claire, welcome.
Thank you. What a fantastic introduction. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
I just read what your mom sent me. No, I'm just teasing. Actually, I took what you sent me and changed it just a little bit. But listen, I'm so glad that you're here. Let's start here. We promised magic, so we'll get to that word in a minute. But first, why did you write the book?
I wrote the book because, so start from the beginning. The book was ruminating around for approximately 2 years. And so I go all over speaking. So I speak to a lot of leaders. I speak to a lot of organizations. I'm on stages. And obviously when I get the brief of what they wanted me to change within their organization or what they wanted me to, have an impact with, obviously I was gathering all this data and all this information. So I was getting real-time knowledge of what was going on and what organizations were needing. And combining that with what I knew myself from the journey that I've been on, I was thinking, right, there's a real need for the new normal coming through. And it's been accelerating at such a pace, particularly since the pandemic. And so I've been writing it and, like I say, ruminating around it for a couple of years. And I thought, do you know what? The time's right now. It just felt, again, my intuition was coming through. I thought it's the right times now. And I do feel it's the right time for this. So that's why I wrote the book. I wrote the book because I know it's really needed in organizations. It's really needed for these leaders. So that's why I wrote the book.
That's a good reason. So what's the big idea? If I force you to take the book and say, what's the big idea that will summarize it, but will also encourage people to say, hey, I need a copy?
So the big idea is the goalposts have moved with leadership, and we're leading still in an outdated way. We're leading in an outdated way, and the world's changed, but the ways of operating haven't caught up with the new change. So the big idea is you need this book to understand how to, incorporate the new rules, as they're called in the book, the 5 rules of leadership, into this changing world. Because if we keep operating in the old way, we're going to continue getting more burnout. We're going to continue having less engagement in organizations. We're going to continue having losses, from every aspect. Cultures are getting destroyed, and so much is in desperate need. So the big idea is the new model, the new framework is for where we're heading into as a world, as an organizations within the world. Big idea is we need this new framework to come through because we're in desperate need of something new.
If the world is changing and we're not, then there's going to be some disconnect for sure, right? And I think a lot of people are feeling it. Organizations are feeling it. Economies are feeling it in some ways. But I want to keep us down kind of at the leader level today, which is really where you're writing this. And so yeah. I've said it. I teased it in the open. It's in the title of the book. And so finally, we're going to get to that big old word, magic. It's all in caps. You're going to tell us why it's all in caps in a second. But what do you mean by magic?
So we know that leadership loves a framework. And we know it's a real great way to get this understanding. It's a short, sharp word that we can work with. And so the reason it's called magic is because magic is mindset, awakening, gumption, intuition, and charisma. And so when we work with all of those pillars and we build on them, as we can do as leaders, this self-led human that we are, we can then transform at the end of it. That's where the magic happens, because we've gone through the magic framework, and we can implement that as leaders, as humans, as self-led leaders, this leadership piece, and within our organizations. So that's the magic.
And we're going to talk about that magic. Obviously, I've already promised that, and that's where we're going to head in this conversation. But one more minute before we go there, Claire, and we won't obviously be able to talk about everything in the book. It's not my intention to do that. But I do want to know why does this formula, why do these 5 pillars matter? Like, how will they ultimately make a difference? Like, we've been talking about the world's changing and all that. Like at a high level, how does this framework become the framework for that change?
Because it strips away all the noise. It strips away everything on the periphery. And what it does, it brings each leader, each manager, each human back into themselves. We come back to who we are. We start with our mindset. So have we got any like limiting beliefs that we've gathered along the way? Have we got anything going on that's not really true to form right now? And then we look at the awakening. So once we've bottomed everything out from a mindset level, we then go into the awakening. And we look at ourselves. Are we leading the right way for ourselves? Are we in alignment? Are we congruent to our values and our beliefs? And then when we've bottomed that out, we then go to the gumption. This is the taking action piece within being a leader. So this is speaking our truth. This is taking the action. This is, gumption for your viewers who maybe don't know what that word is. It's a very traditional.
You get bonus points for that word because it's not used as near as much on this side of the ocean as it is on your side of the ocean. But I do love this word. It was a word my dad used all the time.
Oh, really? I love it. Honestly, I'm like, let's, bring back the gumption movement, because we need it, right? We need more leaders, really being honest, taking the action. This is what I want to say. I'm not just going to shrink back and keep my mouth shut because the whole organization said this or done this for however long, even when it's the wrong way to go. So when we've got our mindset in check and we've got our awakening, our values, our beliefs and everything, then we've got the gumption to take the action, the gumption to speak our mind, the gumption to do what's right. But then we need to dial into our intuition. And I think this is the thing that is the differentiating piece in this new AI world that we are now undeniably in. And we need to dial up the human. We need to be more human. And bringing this intuitive piece into our leadership skills and our style is the cutting edge. It really is. And then we need this charisma and this confidence to actually do all the things that we've built along the journey. And so charisma is being about, it's been I think charisma has this reputation, or it's had a false narrative that this is about being loud and brash, or you know, trying to convince people of something that's not really true, or you know, but it's not. Charisma is being this person who knows who they are, thereby you've gone through the framework, you know who you are, you can lead in that way, and then people are going to follow you, they're going to buy into you as a leader. And then we're going to have more organizations who can then implement their cultures and implement just what they say they're going to do. If we're not charismatic and we haven't got this confidence, so this is the big idea, and this is why people need it, because this is the transformation piece, the M.A.G.I.C framework.
So let's talk about, you know, we should do them in order, I suppose, but I'm not going to. We're talking about charisma, so I'm going to stay here for a second, because in your definition, there are 3 words that come out for me. So actually, before we do that, let me say something else. I'm a big believer, and there's research that says this, that charisma isn't genetic. It's not like some people got the magic thing called charisma and others didn't, but that rather it's a set of skills and behaviors. And if it's a skill and behavior, we can learn it. And in your definition, there are 3 words that come out. And so I'll highlight those 3 words that for me come out, and then you can talk about it. Energy, presence, and authenticity. Those would be 3 words that I use when I talk about it. They were all 3 in your 2-sentence definition. So talk about it at a personal level a little bit more, if you would.
So I think the presence piece that you've mentioned there is so underrated, but we can all of the 3 attributes that you've just spoken about, we can absolutely work on them all. But I think this presence piece, when we are actually with somebody, listening intently, actively listening, honing in on what's going on with what they're saying, what they're not quite saying, the body language, we make them feel heard, seen, listened to, all of these things. This is what a charismatic person does, because they are interested. And when they display that interest, guess what? The person that they're working with, the person that they're leading, the interaction that they're having has got a completely different outcome, or chance of a different outcome, because of what we brought to it. And then this energy piece, you know, one of the principles within the charisma rule is passion is contagious. And I coined that phrase from my first book, where I have these things called Claire's Diamonds. And passion is contagious is what I call my empty van diamond. And I learned quickly when I was on a market stall selling crisps that if I wasn't passionate, and if I wasn't really engaging, and if I wasn't in the moment as a market trader stood selling the crisps and conveying this passion, then I wasn't going to get the crisps sold. And so that's where this piece comes from, in this charisma piece about the energy. Like it's you know, when I'm on stage speaking, it's this energy piece that comes through. We you know, we have to, and that is a willful choice. Just as you said, we can learn to be charismatic. It's about bringing our full self there. It's about leaning into bringing this energy, being present and in the moment. And so you're absolutely correct. It is all learned skills. And it's, I remember reading a book many, many, many years ago about charisma. And because I had the belief that charisma meant you had to be loud and brassy and shouty, and you either had it or you didn't. Same with confidence. A lot of people are like, well, you're either confident or you're not. No, it's a skill we can learn. And the charisma piece is just the same. So yeah, we're on the same page for sure there, Kevin.
There's a fabulous book, and I'm not going to be able to tell you all the author, but the book is called The Charisma Myth. It's either The Charisma Myth or The Myth of Charisma. Either way, we'll have it.
I think that is the one I read. Yeah,
I'm guessing it's the one.
Charisma Myth. I'm sure it's The Charisma Myth. Yeah.
We will have. I'm making a note. We will have it in the show notes, everybody. And given that, I'm going to go back to where we started. There's a reason why charisma's last, because it builds on the other 4. And I want to go back to the first one, because I'm a big fan, and I'm going to guess we're going to end up spending all of our time on 2 of the 4, one of which I'm a huge fan of, and one of which I know you're a huge fan of. And I'm a big fan of mindset. Mindset matters in so many ways, at such a profound level. And you said something about limiting beliefs. And I think that, we need to spend a couple minutes there. And here's why. Because some of you that are listening don't have as many of them, but need to be reminded that a lot of people you work with do. And some of you who
Sure.
are listening do have them and are sort of trying to work around them. You're trying to sort of skirt around them. And so I think everyone within the sound of my voice needs to hear a little bit about limiting beliefs, either for yourself or for others. So Claire, with that
Mhm.
opening, talk about that mindset a little bit, because it's so very important.
So as you've said, the mindset is the core to everything. And I think we do all need reminding, especially as leaders, because we can fall into a narrative of, I can't do that. That's too hard. I tried that before and I failed. And so we can have this programming running on our mind, on autopilot, particularly if we've been in a role for an element of time, whereby if something didn't work one time, we can then say it didn't work another time. So another one of my diamonds is positive disruption and innovation is your best chance of success. Now, that can be worked in a tangible way in the context that I shared it originally when I wrote my first book, in terms of launching a product. But we can also apply it to our mind. Positive disruption and innovation is your best chance of success. So we can interrupt our thought patterns and we can reframe certain things in our brains that are going on. And we don't have to listen to every single thought that comes whizzing through our mind. It's whether we choose to attach to it or not. And we all need this reminder, because we can all get, wedded into our comfort zones. We can all get, like I say, no end of times I speak and people will be like, well, we've tried that before and it didn't work. Yeah, but the marketplace was different. The team was different. The
The
circumstance
world
was
was
different.
different.
You were different. Exactly. So it's like, don't get fixed in this place where it didn't work, so it won't work. Or I failed. No, you didn't. It wasn't that. Something was not quite right, perhaps, and it just didn't land at a specific time. So let's keep refreshing our mind. Let's keep refreshing these thoughts, these patterns, these behaviors, and the limiting belief that I'm not fit for management. I'm not a good leader. Just because something didn't maybe work out one time you tried one thing, that's not the case. So mindset work, I think, is something that we all need to be working on all the time, because as you've just said, the world's changing and it's changing at speed. And so we can't be fixed with our mindset. So that's why mindset is the foundational pillar, because we're starting, it's like excavating, like we're digging in deep and we're getting in and we're sorting things out at the roots to then build the solid foundation on as we get to the charisma.
You talked about the A in magic being awakening, and one of the sections in that I thought was really helpful, and it actually ties to what you just were talking about, and that's this idea of compassion. But you just didn't call it compassion, or not even self-compassion, but you call it sacred self-compassion. How does that connect? Why is that part of the magic that we can create to get out of normal?
Because we have to really meet ourselves. We have to really meet ourselves, all aspects of ourselves, and understand ourselves. Because without we doing that, how on earth can we expect to meet somebody else where they're at, or understand what they're coming from, or sorry, where they're coming from, or what's going on for them? And I think unless we really do dive into, what are my values, what are my beliefs, what is my mindset telling me, and really be wide awake to the leader that I am. Remember, this is the self-leadership piece again. And so we need to dig deep into this. Otherwise, we're just going to be running on someone else's rules, running to somebody else's show, and not really having met ourselves where we are. And that's what I'm really talking about there, because then we can inspire, because we're like, we're a clean vessel then. Do you know? If we don't do all of this for ourselves and truly, and that's why it's sacred self-compassion, because it's like, own the shadows, visit the shadows, work on the shadows, meet yourself, because then we can do the same. And then this is where people sense, and this is when I talk about later on in the book, about this authenticity piece, because if we're not we're not really being true to who we are and showing up in that way, people can sense it a mile off, more so now than I think they ever did, because we're exhausted, right? And we haven't got time for this facade, do you know?
So we were talking about. I'm skipping gumption, everyone, even though I love gumption. I want to talk about intuition. You told me before we started it was your favorite of the five, and I told you that
Yeah.
in reading that came through to me that it was true. And I want to get at this idea of hearing our intuition, and I think all of us hear that voice. I don't know that we always all listen to it, acknowledge it. But there's one time in particular that you're talking about here that I think often we try not to, and that's
Mhm.
around strategy, right? We have this whole thing around strategy about what it is.
Yeah.
And my last guest, we were talking about my last live guest. We were talking about that a little bit, and like this is what that is, and there's all this data, and there's all that stuff, and we probably don't think there's room for space for need for intuition, and yet you say the
Mhm.
opposite. So like how do we
Oh.
balance intuition with strategy? How do we deal with the tension between the two of those, or what might be tension between the two of those?
Yeah, and absolutely, we might not face tension, but I think the thing that I'm really wanting to advocate and bring to the table is to allow intuition to have a voice with all of our decisions. Because then once we allow it in with the smaller stakes, so in my book I talk about, I'm not saying, when you've got a £2 million budget and you've got to make a decision on one thing, go with your intuition. I'm saying test it on the smaller things first. Because when we allow our intuitive voice to come to the party with all of our decisions, we'll see other things. We'll have a different vision to what could possibly be missed by strategy alone. Because if we don't allow this full holistic decision-making process, then we could be missing a trick. Because our intuition is being, again, with the same way that charisma and confidence have been mislabeled throughout the decades, intuition's been mislabeled as a bit of woo-woo, as a bit of like, we don't talk about it. And certainly I didn't talk about for a lot of, I'm very intuitive. And I kind of like, I don't know if it was a thing that I felt or it was something that actually was true. I'm not really sure. I haven't really computed that. But for a lot of years, I felt like I couldn't speak about the fact that I leaned into my intuition. And sometimes I went against it because it wasn't the thing to do. It didn't fit the model of leadership. We don't bring intuition in, so go against it. And boy, did it bite me when I did go against it. And I share parts of that in the book. And so, but now it is more and more proven that, your gut is your second brain, and it's not woo-woo, and it's not just like, oh, I've just got a feeling. It's all your collected data. It's all things that you've sensed and that you've picked up throughout your life, and it's stored. You do remember. And so
It's kind of
we
like
need
your
to bring
own.
this in.
It's kind of like your own large language model sitting in your stomach. Everything's in there,
Yes,
right? I'm sorry,
yes, yes.
I should have interrupted you.
No. And so to answer your question about bringing it in, it's like, well, it everybody will work different. Some might work with intuition first and then look to strategy to fill in the gaps. Some might go to strategy first with the data and the figures and the spreadsheets and that, and then look to the strategy. So say, okay, so what could I be missing here? And then allow this voice to come through, this intuitive voice to come through. And again, I shared in the book when I did my Clifton Strengths Finder, my top Clifton strength is strategy. I love strategy. I really do. But I just think when you combine that with intuition, it's rocket fuel. So bringing the two together is a competitive edge for a leader, for organizations, and we just need to allow this intuitive piece to come through so much more.
So, admittedly, this conversation has been much more on the personal level for me as a leader, for you as a leader, as a listener. And yet, our goal here is to think not just about us as leaders, but to think about it organizationally. So, what organizational steps might you recommend, Claire, if someone's listening and say, "Hey, I want to help some of these ideas get clarified across our team, across our leaders, or just like how might we take some of these ideas to the organizational level?
So again, I think it's about what they're typically, when I speak to organizations, they'll have a bottleneck at some place at some point with something, but it all starts with the human leader. And so it's a case of dialing into the human, and taking them through the steps, really, I think, of where they need to be. We know we've already established we need to look at the mindset as the starting point and then going through it all. So I think it's a case of, honestly, it's about stripping things back to basics. And that's why the M.A.G.I.C framework is such a, I don't want to say simple to devalue it, but what I want to say is it's a real easy framework, let's say, because whilst we're dealing with complex situations and complex humans and complex organizations, cultures, world issues, everything, bring it all back down to basics. And I think that's what's got lost along the way. In the world of the old leadership paradigm, where we've got the control, outdated ones that are clearly not working in lots of ways, bring it all back down to basics. Bring it all back down to basics. Let's look at the humans. Let's look at the magic within the humans, and then how we do that.
Excellent. So the only thing you knew for sure, what you probably knew I was going to say, well, what does magic mean? But the question that you knew ahead of time I was going to ask you is this. What are you reading these days, Claire?
So I'm in the middle of so I'm not a person who reads one book at a time. I've got 3 or 4 on the go, and I'm really enjoying The Signs by Dr. Tara Swart. And I'm also enjoying Beyond Belief, and I can't pronounce the author's name, but you happen to have the book as well, so we can fill that in with the show notes. But that's it.
We'll have it in there. It's Near's newest book. We'll have that in there, as well as The Sign, as well as Claire's new book, Forget Normal, I Want Magic, the 5 Rules of Leadership. We'll have that in there. But where can people learn more, Claire? Where do you want to point them? I'll hold the book up. Where do you want to point them? Where can they learn more about your work, the book, etc.?
So they can go onto Amazon for the book. It's also going to be launching into the States and worldwide. I think the 20, so it'll definitely be out. So yeah, definitely go onto the Kogan Page website and go to Amazon, Waterstones, all sorts of, if you just pop it into Google, I'm sure it will do its magic, no pun intended, and it will direct you to where to go. You can also go on my website, which is clairebrumby.com.
clairebrumby.com. We'll have all those links in the show notes, everybody. So I have a question before I say goodbye to all of you and say goodbye to Claire. I have a question for all of you that I ask every week, and it's an important question, perhaps the most important question of our time together, and it's simply this. Now what? Now that you've heard some of the insights from the M.A.G.I.C framework, now that you've gotten some ideas from Claire, if you're like me, you've taken some notes, either mental or physical. And my question to you is, what are you going to do? Because if you don't take some action, you might be inspired, you might be informed, you might have an insight, but until you take action, nothing's going to change. You're not going to get past your current normal unless you take some new action. And so there's one or more things that you heard today. And when you determine what those things are for you and then act on them, this will have been of great value, good use of about 30 minutes of your time. So Claire, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
And so everybody, if you enjoyed this, you better be subscribed so you don't miss another episode. And if you found this useful and were thinking as you were listening or watching, I know someone that would really, really enjoy hearing from Claire, then send this to them and get them to subscribe as well. Wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, do that, because we're on all those places. And we'll be back next week with another episode of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.